Hello everyone, welcome back to Extract the Fact. I'm your host, Adam Izraelovitz. So I'm excited to launch today topic 2. This is our second content video on the program. And today we're transitioning away from politics and going more into sports. And some of you might be thinking, well, how can you do a show on both sports and politics? But the truth is actually, sports and politics are intrinsically related. So while on the field or on the court or wherever, you might just think that sports are merely an outlet for politics. What goes on behind the scenes in many sports venues and many sports leagues are actually really closely related and have heavily involved with politics. So we're exploring one of those topics today. And the topic for today is, should the one and done basketball rule for the National Basketball Association be abolished? So I'm just going to read quickly from CBS Sports what that rule is. So they state that the one and done rule is that a player must be 19 years or at least 1 year removed from graduation of his high school class to be eligible for the NBA draft. This rule has led to the advent of the one and done player who declares for the draft after their freshman season in college, sometimes dropping out of school immediately after the basketball season ends. So essentially the one and done rule, there's a 1 year gap year in between high school and the time that you are allowed to be eligible for the NBA draft at 19 years old. So this is a pretty unpopular policy, and now both the NBA Commissioner Adam Silver and the National Basketball Players Association Director Michelle Roberts want to see the rule changed. But there's now a contrast on how the rule should be changed. So Silver and the NBA camp argues that he hopes to raise the minimum age to 20, while Roberts wants to bring it back down to 18. So there's a contrast in bringing it up. 2 years of college or 2 years of waiting for the draft, or you can declare for the NBA draft right out of high school at the age of 18. So we're going to explore those two sides today, and let's just jump right into it. So first, I'll be arguing on behalf of the high school argument, saying NBA college and high school athletes should be able to jump right from high school into the NBA when they are draft eligible, if they are able to. So a primary component of this argument is Skip Bayless. He used to be an ESPN sports contributor, now he works for Fox. When he made this pitch, he was on ESPN. And he argues that forcing a kid to wait to pursue their profession is inherently unconstitutional. So he argues in many other professions, such as if you want to be a blacksmith, or if you want to be an electrician, or if you want to be a plumber, you don't have to do any college if you want. You have the right to pursue your profession and seek a salary no matter what age you are. And he argues that after high school, people have sufficient education to where they can pursue their profession, such as being a basketball player. He doesn't see why in other professions you're allowed to pursue, and in basketball you're infringed and you're waiting a year, and in the proposed new rule you're waiting 2 years till you're 20 instead of 18. Now, Stephen A. Smith, an ESPN contributor, also argues that there's a racial element to this postponement of draft eligibility for NBA players. So the Institute of Diversity and Ethics in Sport, the NBA, according to that, the NBA was 74.3% black during the 2015 and 16 campaign. Now in golf, on the other hand, a predominantly white sport, you're allowed to become a professional, and it is in fact encouraged that you become a professional right out of high school, so you do not have to play college golf. You can jump straight from high school to the PGA Tour level. And he argues that why in that predominantly white sport you're encouraged to jump straight to the pros, but in basketball they discourage it and in fact ban it for high school athletes. He thinks that it's a racial construct, that people believe that these black athletes are not mature enough to handle being a professional. Now, in another piece of evidence towards the high school argument, and I think this one really speaks volumes, is head coach John Calipari. He's the head coach for Kentucky men's basketball, a premier college basketball powerhouse in the SEC. And Calipari, you would think, because he's a head coach for a college team, that he would be on the other side. He would want players to wait till they're 20 so he could have 2 years to develop these high-end people and really develop Kentucky basketball further. But actually, Calipari is the opposite. He believes that if they want, players should be able to declare right out of high school. And Calipari uses the case of DeJuan Wagner to illustrate his claim. So he argues DeJuan Wagner was one of his best players at Kentucky, and he was the 4th overall pick in a draft one year. Now, as the 4th overall pick, your starting salaries your first 2 years. In year 1, you get $4.7 million, and in year 2, you get $5.6 million. So right off the bat, the moment you sign that contract after you're drafted, you get automatically that 4.7 1 year and 5.6 the next, regardless of what happens to you. Now, unfortunately for Wagner, despite his immense talent, his first year in the NBA, he contracted colitis, and that ended his NBA career. Fortunately, though, for Wagner, since he was drafted, he got around $10 million in his salary, despite his career-ending injury. So he still had that safety net to rely on, despite his career-ending injury. Now, Calipari says, and this is on a podcast with Colin Cowherd on Fox, he says, quote, "What happens if he was on my campus and he never got started?" When Calipari says, and he, referring to Wagner, never got started, that means if the rule was increased to 20 years old, Wagner would have gotten colitis on his campus and no NBA team would have drafted him. So he would be left with $0 because college athletes do not get paid. That's a debate for later, but college athletes do not get paid as of now. And that ruined his chances to pursue his lifelong dream in basketball. But luckily, because he was eligible for the draft, he got that compensation. So finally, there's a wealth element to this, and that's that a lot of kids who are playing basketball now, they grew up in poverty, and they need money to support their families who are struggling right now. Again, college athletes are not paid, so they see a way of jumping to the NBA to kind of support their families or need, because there's a substantial money that you get when you're drafted into the NBA. Now, on the flip side, here's the case for being draft eligible for the NBA after 2 years of college or after 2 years of a developmental league, a year up from the current model. So a big proponent of this theory is Colin Cowherd. He, again, used to work on ESPN, now he works at Fox. He's a primary contributor, and he runs the podcast called The Herd with Colin Cowherd. Now, he argues that there's a significant culture gap in basketball compared to sports such as football and golf, where basketball players are immature and concerned with money over passion. And he argues that football players, such as Melvin Gordon, who was picked 15th overall in the NFL draft, and Andrew Luck, who was picked 1st overall in his NFL draft, both sacrificed huge paydays in a riskier sport for injury than basketball and stayed in college in order to pursue and in order to develop on a college campus. And Cowherd argues that developing in college, you have more access to better facilities, great quality coaches that want to develop you instead of throwing you into the fire right away in the NBA. They have advanced training staffs. You can get great treatment and you get an education. And when he's saying basketball players are too concerned with, it's all about the money for them and how they just want to progress to get money and they don't really care about developing themselves, in contrast to football. And he says in football, it should be the opposite because it's such a riskier sport for injury that football players should be the ones declaring, not basketball players. Now, he also makes the point that NBA is a business, and at the end of the day, they have to do what they can do to protect their business model. And if they have 18-year-olds coming into the league with 33-year-old grown men playing in it, that's going to create usually a competitive imbalance. So people think if they're better than what they are, they'll enter the league at 18 thinking they're the next best thing, but in reality, when you're playing against people that are 15 years older than you, it's going to harm the competition inside the NBA. Also, he believes that in reference to his immaturity theory, and this is according to Sports Illustrated, one player by the name of D'Angelo Russell, who was the number 2 overall pick for the Los Angeles Lakers, filmed one of his teammates talking about another woman while this man was engaged to his girlfriend at the time. And he posted this video out onto the public, and his teammates turned on him, and it was a very immature thing to do because I think it caused a breakup in this. The guy's name was Nick Young. It caused a breakup in that relationship. So this is just a reference at the immaturity that new players that come in off the one and done rule have. And Colin Cowherd thinks there should be added another year to allow for development of emotional growth, such as in this case being immature, and physical growth, so they're more ready for the NBA game. In addition, the New York Times states that the G League is now the G League is the developmental league under the NBA that kind of feeds into the NBA, kind of like college. And that is another reason why you can extend the age limit to 20 instead of 18, because there is a league in place where players do get paid after high school. So the NBA has made this a real point of emphasis, and salaries have increased in this developmental league, and you can join right after high school for this. Salaries went from $19,000 to $26,000, and now in 2018, according to the New York Times, it's going to be $35,000 a year for those players in the G League, which is not nearly, as I mentioned before, the $4.7 million that a draft pick could accumulate, but this is still something, and it's an improving mark for the NBA. So they're saying, despite the rule being extended to 2 years after college, and you have to wait till you're 20 to declare for the NBA, you can work on your talents and get a payday in the G League as opposed to college. So there are two different options for those players to pursue. So let me know what you guys think. I think this is a really interesting topic just because it's so talked about now. Whenever I think of college basketball, intrinsically I just think, boom, one and done rule. And doing research, I really see both sides to this argument. There are cases to be made that it should be lowered to 18 like it was in 2006. And there's also a case for me made to increase the age to 20. And you see kind of both interests, how the NBA favors increasing it to 20 while the Players Association favors it being lowered to 18. Just a side note, in other parts of the world, such as Europe, you're allowed to play professionally when you're 15. So for example, this year's number 3 overall pick, Luka Doncic, he has played professionally in Madrid ever since he was 15 years old. So that kind of experience is lacking in the NBA, and that's just kind of a contrast to what debate is going on now. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Please share this video, and I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you.